Welcome back to the show as we continue our discussion on the South China Sea dispute involving China and the Philippines. Let's get back to our panel. Jung-Jun-Shi, the new Philippines president, Rodrigo Duterte, he says that his country would be ready to hold talks with China to avoid any kind of conflict on this Hague verdict. Do you think that China and the Philippines can reach a solution through bilateral negotiations, regardless of what the arbitration panel says?
Well, actually, China has been advocating that all the disputes in the South China Sea should be peacefully settled through friendly consultations and negotiations between the parties directly concerned. But the Philippines government initiated the arbitration by itself, and China doesn't agree. So after the award of the arbitration is issued, should come back together, and the Philippines should return to the negotiation table with China. Actually, China has settled its land boundary issues with 12 out of its 14 neighbors, and also we have settled the maritime delimitation issue with Vietnam in the Beibu Gulf. So this shows that negotiations is the best way to settle the disputes between countries. And no matter what the award is, China will not accept. China hopes to start or to resume talks with the Philippines on the South China Sea issue. And I'm sure in the end, the two countries will reach a good result on settling the disputes.
Ambassador Khan, there are dozens of countries which support China in this South China Sea dispute. Among those countries is Cambodia, whose prime minister has said that the upcoming decision is, quote, politically motivated. How important is this show of support from ASEAN countries for China, or for that matter, support from Russia?
Well, I think support from Russian Federation and Cambodia is very important, both symbolically and substantively, because Cambodia is a member of ASEAN, and a dissenting voice sends out a very strong signal, and Moscow is very important in this equation. I mean, of course, it matters what Kenya says or what Pakistan says, what other countries are saying, what the supporters or detractors are saying, or the opponents are saying. But what is more important is peace and stability in the region, because the United States and China are two major powers. They are interdependent economically. On almost all strategic decisions, they have to consult each other. And therefore, as I said earlier, that their differences or their relationship should not be reduced to the South China Sea. Both, we know, are capable of defending each other, but both are also very important, vital for promoting peace and stability in the region. China, as you know, has launched this mega initiative, which is called One Belt, One Road, which tries to connect regions, and that includes ASEAN region also, ASEAN region with the whole of East Asia and with the rest of the world, particularly Africa. Given that bigger picture, I would say that all parties concerned, including the Philippines, should try to sort out their problems bilaterally with Beijing, and because that is the only viable path as far as the anticipated award of the PCA, or Permanent Court of Arbitration, is concerned. That would not be accepted by China. China has made it clear. So what we need to avoid right now is build up in the South China Sea region, because there's already a lot of build-up. You were asking this question, whether there would be escalation. I think there's already some escalation in the run-up to the decision, and steps should be taken to de-escalate the situation, because if you listen to President Barack Obama or President Xi Jinping, when they meet at the summit level, they say that they want to promote their relations and they want to reduce the divergences and differences that they have. And therefore, because if there's a volatility in South China Sea, that would not remain confined to that area. that would affect and infect the entire globe. And therefore, it is the responsibility not only of these two major powers, but also regional powers to de-escalate the situation and move towards interdependence, move towards win-win solutions. And a win-win solution in this context would necessitate that there are bilateral channels open to resolve these disputes that they have, and all the states have inherited them from history.
So, Rob, you noted in an article that you wrote that UNCLOS, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, makes no demand that an entitlement or delimitation question be determined by legal action, only that such issues be resolved peacefully. And of course, China has already said that arbitration will not solve the dispute. Is negotiation still the best option open?
It is easily the best option open. I say it in the context of this particular arbitration case. The most contested elements in this arbitration case pertain to China's activities in the southern sector of the South China Sea, which is near the Spratlys Islands. These relate to fishing, mineral rights, land reclamation, law enforcement issues, etc., etc. What is very, very likely in the arbitral verdict is that the arbitrators will find that they do not have jurisdiction to render a decision on those issues. What we will then see is 3 years of bitter rhetoric which has disturbed the harmony of the South China Sea, at the end of which these important underlying issues are still open and still a matter of contestation. The president of the International Tribunal of the Law of the Sea last week had observed that increasingly judicial fora are being used for political purposes, not for legal and the judicial reasons that they need to be used for to create clarification. They're being used politically, and that does not help the process. It hurts the process. You know, China opted out from delimitation at the time of signing UNCLOS. What the Philippines craftily did was essentially ask the court to rule on entitlements in the South China Sea, but that was a backdoor approach to actually gaining a delimitation in the South China Sea. It was what is termed as lawfare. And after the court verdict, we have seen China get very engaged in things like reclamations, etc., etc. Those are all within China's legal rights. So China also thereafter went and took actions which were within the scope of its legal rights entirely, but which also had a destabilizing effect. So you see, lawfare against lawfare, where no solution is ultimately rendered, is a means for just bitter tensions and polarization. The two countries have to sit together and do this consensually, because at the end of this day, this is between China and Philippines. No other country has enforcement power in this case, whatever the decision be, and therefore, even if the award in some respects goes in Philippines' way, it does not have the enforcement capacity. It necessarily needs to sit across the table, and that's why President Duterte's willingness to talk on these lines is very, very encouraging.
Okay. Zhang Junxi, there was a recent commentary in Xinhua, the Chinese news agency, which warned that this ruling could cause long-term damage in the region, and that commentary said, quote, among other things, that the arbitral tribunal in The Hague risks opening a Pandora's box at sea, which could have dangerous consequences. So the question is, what can China do to downplay this noise and this Western propaganda and to keep promoting negotiation through bilateral and multilateral talks within the framework of ASEAN? Well,
China has actually advocated the dual-track approach to settling the South China Sea issue. On one hand, China wants to peacefully resolve the South China Sea dispute with parties directly concerned. On the other hand, China wants to maintain peace and stability with ASEAN countries. In the future, I think that China is ready to start talks, negotiations, and consultations with other claimants in the South China Sea dispute, including the Philippines, the Vietnamese, and other parties. I think this is the best way and only way to settle the South China Sea issue. And the outside powers should support the joint effort by China and other claimants to peacefully settle the dispute. I think both China and the United States share the common interest in maintaining peace and stability in the South China Sea and also in the Asia-Pacific region. And we hope that the United States will support the joint efforts by China and other countries in this region to peacefully resolve their disputes. And also, we call for ASEAN countries to jointly maintain the peace and stability in this region. Even if we don't have some disputes with other countries, and they can show their support for maintaining peace and stability in this region. I think this is a dual-track approach, and it is initially initiated by some of the ASEAN countries.
Wilson, what is Kenya's view on bilateral negotiations, on talks to resolve this dispute?
Yeah, I think the Kenya's view is that these talks must be done peacefully and must be done within the international legal framework, and which they think that China has a very good understanding of that process. So in this case, they think that the interested parties and claimants should actually first of all sit down and have a talk with, on a round table and be able to come up with a solution. The Kenyan, I think, in this case, the Kenyan government is aligning itself with that view because it is concerned that if this issue escalates into something that is more, or maybe you can say undesirable, in terms of escalation of peace and stability in that region, it would hamper a lot the relationship between the two, especially for Kenya, which largely depend on China for its development assistance.
Ambassador Khan, China has said that it will not take part in this arbitration process, nor will it accept the results of the arbitration process. Given that, does this move by China in any way undermine its commitment to international law, in your view?
Not at all. China has argued out its case very convincingly, very compellingly. And their government officials and their commentators and legal experts have been defining China's position. In fact, they have said that they did not accept this referral to the PCA, the Permanent Court of Arbitration. And second, that their rejection of this referral is on the basis of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. So they have not transgressed or they have not violated any of the clauses of the Law of the Sea. Second thing is that since China has rejected it, it would not be legally operative or binding on China because it has already made its intention very clear and it did not sit through the proceedings of the PCA. So when the award is delivered, China is not bound by international law to abide by it. That said, I think that, as you said earlier, that there are political dimensions to this issue. There are also legal aspects. But the bigger reality is that all the states of the region, that includes China, ASEAN countries, and the United States also has legitimate interests in the region. They have to work out solutions which are sustainable. And legal quibbling or legal fighting or contestation is not a satisfactory solution to a very, very complex issue.
Okay, that's where we have to leave it. Thanks to all of you for joining us.